Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 75 of the Run in the Paint podcast. I'm Miles. I'm here with Joey, Nick, and Jackson. Guys, how are you doing today?
Feeling good, feeling great.
What's up, guys? Good to see your faces. Hey, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Jackson, how's
Jackson.
it going?
Jackson, how's it going?
Hey, buddy.
Going.
Hey,
Sure.
buddy. You doing okay over there, Mr. Hoodie?
Yes, I'm doing great. Oh, I had to change actually because I right before we started I spilled water on myself.
Hey, at least you
Classic.
weren't wearing the Joel Embiid jersey. That would
Right,
have
that's
been a detrimental.
the most valuable jersey.
Yeah, I already burned it. You're right. Too bad.
Absolutely. But, well, this is the fifth of six division preview episodes, and the final one regarding the Western Conference. We will be talking about the Northwest Division, which includes the three best teams from the whole entire Western Conference last season. So that will be a lot of fun. But first, we actually have some news. For the first time in a long time, we actually have a bit of news. And it is a bit of a rule change, I guess you could say. Announced a couple days ago that the NBA is expanding the use of instant replay on their out of bounds reviews. If you guys haven't heard of the details, I'll give them to you right now. Under this new rule, if instant replay of an out of bounds violation is triggered by a coach's challenge, the on-court officials and replay center will be able to review the video to determine whether a foul prior to the violation should have been called. So basically, if there's an out-of-bounds call because of a foul, they can now call a foul instead of the out-of-bounds. Great rule change. We were talking about in the pre-pod lobby. Like, this is something that just seems like common sense.
It was always so aggravating watching it. And, like, you told me before, like, Jeff Van Gundy always complaining on TV saying, like, clearly the dude hit his arm, but you can't reverse it. So now that they can, it just makes sense. Oh, the referee's here.
Oh, nice. Referee Nick, yeah. How are you guys going to be able to adjust with this new rule in place?
Well, I just thought I'd put on the official jersey to give my official opinion.
Right.
And no, I think it's a good rule. Like, obviously, we were talking with the example that you're about to show everybody. It was a pivotal moment in like the second round of the Western Conference playoffs last year, where it kind of swung game 2, I believe.
Let's go ahead and walk through. This is the example that they have on the official NBA website regarding this call. So this is the final minute, game 2, Western Conference Finals, Mavericks, Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards with the ball late, throws it to Jaden McDaniels, somehow holds on to the ball. Then it's knocked out of bounds by Kyrie Irving. And when you look on the replay, he fouls him, but because it goes off, because, it goes out on Jaden McDaniels, it's Mavericks ball, and they couldn't have called the foul. So instead, the ball goes back to Dallas, and they end up obviously going on to win game 2 of the series and the entire series. That ends up happening instead of Jaden McDaniels going to the line for 2 free throws. They could go up 4, could completely swing that whole series. And it's something we really didn't talk about a whole lot at the time. But if this rule was in place, it definitely could have changed the outcome. But, I mean, it's just nice to have this in here finally after so many years of just wanting this in here. Just common sense basketball. We want the right call to be made.
And I guess, like, the argument would be, if you can go back on replay and start calling fouls, like, that could lead to, I guess, a bit of a slippery slope. What other rules are you going to implement from there? But for, like, the time being in this, in these cases, I think it makes perfect sense. So no reason to, like, get frantic about a minor, like, sort of rule change that makes sense.
Jackson, you have any thoughts on this new review change?
I mean, it's a good change for the league. I think it's going to help a lot of those close calls.
Going to help us out a lot. Yep, going to help my boys out.
Stop it.
Going to help the Zach Zarbas and Courtney Kirkland's Nick's buddies right there. Just got home from a night at the bar with them, actually. So
it's the off season. What do you want? It's the off season.
Exactly. Well, let's get into the Northwest Division. And this is a division kind of similar to the Atlantic Division that we covered in the last video. Make sure you check that one out if you want to take a look at our thoughts on those teams in the Eastern Conference. But where there are so many great teams in this division, specifically the three best from last season in the Western Conference, all determined by one game. First, let's get it started with the Denver Nuggets, who last season won 57 games, ended up being the second seed in the Western Conference, tied for number one with Oklahoma City, who we'll talk about later. Defeated the Lakers round one in 5 games, and then fell to the Timberwolves in a great 7-game series. And in this offseason, they lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a key starter, and they signed veterans Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric to kind of fill out their bench. Here is a look at their roster. Nick, let's start with you. What is a question that you have for the Nuggets heading into the season?
Well, I think the biggest question has to be, is Christian Braun going to be able to fill KCP's shoes? Is he ready to step into the starting lineup on a championship level competing team? And, you can't really predict that. You kind of just got to wait and see what's going to happen there. I think that's obviously the biggest question heading into the year for them. The second biggest question for me is, what is Russ going to look like in this offense? And what's his role going to be coming off the bench? Or maybe like he finds his way, like, if Christian Braun isn't panning out as a starter, could Russ maybe slide in there next to Jamal Murray and MPJ and crack that lineup? I don't know. I don't know what Mike Malone's going to do. I know that he's going to want to win. And actually, while I'm talking, I might as well just go on to my third biggest question, because I've heard some rumors about some butting of heads between front office and coaching staff there in Denver. I don't really have anything to back it up, or I haven't really heard specifics, but all I heard was that the front office and Mike Malone don't always see eye to eye. And, that's not really a good formula for winning championships.
Yeah, and you wonder what that could potentially be about, because, like, right now, when you look at this Nuggets roster and, the areas that they had to fill, I mean, there really wasn't much they could do. They're already paying Murray, Jokic, Porter. They just signed Murray to an extension, which I know is something that we were waiting on for a while. We seem to talk about it every episode, like, why haven't they extended Jamal Murray? But to me, it really doesn't seem like the Nuggets could have really done much more as far as the offseason. I think that they did a decent job signing guys like Westbrook and Saric. I like the Saric pickup because he's a guy that, when he was playing overseas before he even came to the league, he's always been a pretty good playmaker at that, center position. And the Nuggets really haven't had a guy that can kind of do that, run the same offense like they do with Jokic. There was that half a year where they had DeMarcus Cousins as their backup center, and he played very well in that. But they, having Saric in there, I think will help a lot. Jackson, Russell Westbrook on this team, how do you think that could play out?
I mean, they need, like, looking at their bench unit, they really don't have a guy that's like, I don't see a guy who's gonna like be a leader on that bench unit in terms of scoring the ball. They're just that the half court offense kind of looks concerning. I mean, outside of like Julian Strawther's gonna go out there and he's gonna hit some threes for you. And I think P. Watt plays good defense, but even his offensive upside isn't like crazy. So I'm just concerned about their depth, obviously. I mean, I know they have probably arguably the best starting lineup in the NBA, and it might have gone, and I think that took a step back as well. And I think their depth also took a step back. So I'm a little less confident in the Nuggets than I would have been like going into last year. And I think Russell Westbrook doesn't really kind of move the needle that much for me in terms of this team, unfortunately.
I think the biggest thing they did this offseason was re-sign Jamal Murray, because just having him inked before the season starts, you kind of dodge a lot of questions about what his future is going to be, obviously, there in Denver. And that is a huge thing for a guy like whose career relies on, playing, like, just to have him settled and knowing that he's going to be here for the next 4 years, he can kind of like just focus on playing now rather than have to worry about what's going on with his money.
Yeah, it's certainly a nice thing to have that done heading into the season. Last year we talked about it with Jamal Murray earlier in the offseason about how he played, very well during the regular season, put up a lot of career numbers, and the playoffs was kind of inconsistent against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But regardless, him and Jokic, that duo at the end of games, there's no duo I'd rather have at the end of games than Murray and Jokic because of their chemistry and the championship experience. My question, it's obviously the depth, but I also, so we can go to something that we hope to see from this team. I would like to see another or maybe he hasn't had one of these yet in the regular season. I'd like to see an outstanding regular season from Jamal Murray. And I would also like to see another guy, a guy we love to talk about, Michael Porter Jr., emerge his role a little bit because he's a player, who I think can show a lot more. He was very efficient, to start his career. Had, he has the lingering back injuries that make it kind of tough. But, if Michael Porter Jr. can emerge into a star level player, I think he's capable of 18 points, 8 rebounds per game on, 40% from 3 on high volume. If they can get that, it 0.7 assists per game, right?
Yeah.
If they can get that from him, it helps things out so much for this Nuggets team because, Nick, you're right. Christian Brown, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, they're all just project guys at the end of the day. Christian Brown has, played, very solid the first couple of years, but I don't know if it's enough to be a starting caliber player on a team that is going to want to compete for another championship.
No, that's right.
This depth was a concern last year. It's going to be a concern this year. Like, we all saw it when Jokic was off the floor, how bad the Nuggets were. Like, they needed to do more than just sign Russ and Dario Saric.
I will say, though, the bench is a lot better now than it was last year because now you have, their bench was basically filled with inexperienced players besides, a Reggie Jackson who was solid, here or there. But now you've got Russell Westbrook, who really wants to win at this point of his career, and you've got Dario Saric, a veteran, around some of these other, young players. I think that it will go better this year when Jokic is off the floor. They shouldn't consistently be giving up leads like they were last year. Russell Westbrook, he had a very bad playoffs, but in the regular season, still one of the best backup point guards in the league. He still has a lot of talent. And I think it could fit in. We could see some interesting lineups. I think Michael Malone is going to have to experiment a little bit, with Russell Westbrook, in case, unless he somehow randomly adds a consistent 3-point shot, which I don't think is going to happen at this point. There could be some times where they play him offensively, like in the Aaron Gordon dunker spot, where he's just, getting, alley-oop dunks, off of lob passes in the short roll by Jokic or Gordon or something. I think Michael Malone is going to have to experiment a lot to make it work, but he is a very good head coach, so I think that he could make it work. As far as their win totals, it is 52.5 games. What do you guys think about this win total for the Denver Nuggets in the regular season?
Well, obviously, Jokic keeps their floor pretty high. And I guess the question you'd have to ask yourself is, what's their ceiling then? If their floor is high, then what's their ceiling? And with the depth, it's a question mark. I think 52 is pretty accurate. I think they're going to win 50 games. I think it's 52.5. So I don't think that they make it to 53. I think I'm going to have to go under.
I honestly have to go over. I think they're around a 55 win team. I think after the playoffs last year, I honestly do think that Jamal Murray will come back and have an outstanding regular season that Miles is hoping for. But as their ceiling, as long as you have Jokic and Murray and you still have this great of a starting lineup, the ceiling's got to still be championship. That's still their goal, is to make the championship and to make the finals and to win it. I think realistically, if they make it to the conference finals and make it to the finals, I think that's a successful season. It really comes down to their depth, though, because I got to see it till believe it. It was so bad last year.
It's just you have a lot riding on Christian Brown and Peyton Watson.
Yeah.
But like Jackson said, in that starting lineup, I wouldn't say it's the best starting lineup in the league, but you do have Jokic, who's the best player in the world. We all can agree on that. Jamal Murray, who is very capable of finally making an all-star game this year. Maybe that'll happen.
We'll see.
Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, great surrounding guys with Jokic. They could. I talked about this with the Celtics in the last video. If the Nuggets go into a series and they may have the best top four
Right.
of any other team in the Western Conference. Well, I mean, there are other teams that could be in the conversation of that, but if their top four is better than everyone else's, then, a lot of times that can be enough in the playoffs, but you do need those other role players to definitely step up. Me personally, I'll go 53-54 wins, so I'll go a little bit over because Jokic, 3 MVPs in the last 4 seasons. I don't see any reason why he would decline a whole bunch from that. And I also, losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I don't think that makes them, I don't think that makes them 5 games worse than they were last year. That's basically what you would be saying if you're taking the under on this.
That's where I'm at 53, 54, 55, like in that range within that 3-game span, because I'm looking at the standings from last year, and I think the Clippers won 51 games last year. I think this team has a better floor and a better ceiling than that Clippers team from last year.
That's a fair point. I have them 50 to 52 wins, and if I'm right, then you guys all got 10 push-ups.
Oh my goodness! If we lose by 1 game.
All right, you owe me 100 push-ups because.
No, I'm the odd man out.
Timberwolves were the 3 seed, baby.
Dude, Nick makes the rules. He's the referee. Like,
yeah, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Don't make me get the cane.
Last thing I'll say about the Nuggets before we move on, I mentioned at the beginning how hard cap they kind of are. It's a similar situation with the team we'll talk about next, the Minnesota Timberwolves. But Denver, with the money that they are paying for Murray, Jokic, Porter, Aaron Gordon has a $22 million player option at the end of the season. He'll decline that, or he'll either decline it or the Nuggets will just give him that extension. He's definitely worth that. Their depth, it's been a struggle for them to get that surrounding depth the last 2 years since they won that championship in 2023. If they do have an early first round or early playoff exit, like they had last year, because the Nuggets were the favorite in the West the whole season, and second round loss was very disappointing. If they have something like that again this year, Michael Porter is a guy that I could very well see getting traded because I feel like he is their best avenue to getting better surrounding players.
Dude, I don't know though, because I feel like if they're a first round exit or a second round exit, because last year it was kind of on Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray did not play very well in the playoffs, at least the second round against Minnesota. So I think if he has another bad playoffs, and if he doesn't make an all-star team, his value is an all-star player, but he's not playing like an all-star player, and he's not bringing that same value in the playoffs. So I think he could also be a guy that's kind of on the move.
He just signed that extension, though. There's no way they're going to move him now.
No.
Dude, he doesn't play well.
It doesn't matter. They're going to have to eat that contract for 4 years. In a couple of years, we could be talking about that, especially if the no all-star, but not just after he got this extension.
And Jamal was still good in the playoffs. If we're saying that in the playoffs that 20 points, 5 assists is bad, then that says how good he is as a player, if we're being honest.
Well, true, but he has to, for him, it's got to be more because he is that second, he's the second option on a championship contending team.
When they won that championship.
Well, this was the first rough playoff, because I can agree that he didn't have the best playoffs. He's usually
a good playoff player.
Yeah, he's an elite playoff player. He's one of the best, playoff performers we've had over the last few years. This is the first year where it was kind of rough. And even in the game 7 loss to Minnesota, he had 35 points. Jokic had 36 points. It was the other guys that really couldn't step up, and it was a guy like Porter. I just feel like he's the most expendable because you could find 3-point shooting. You can't really find the other things that
Not
it's
like
harder
him.
to
He's
find things
perfect.
like Murray and Gordon. But let's move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves next. They have the same win total as the Nuggets, 52.5 wins. Last year, they won 56 games, were the number 3 seed in the Western Conference, made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, just short of Jackson's bold prediction of an NBA Finals appearance. But very, very good prediction. I've been giving Jackson the credit for that because no one really could have saw that coming at the beginning of the season, and it worked. They had
I did.
one of the best defensive units in the entire league. And they are still, still looking pretty good. Here's their roster, Jackson, with your Timberwolves. Let's get it started. What's your question about the Timberwolves?
I mean, just looking at their roster, I think they got way better. Like, I think they have the best like 1-2 punch for off the bench. It reminds me of like Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell a couple years ago for the Clippers. But I think they have a better starting lineup than the Clippers to go along with that. I think Dillingham and Naz Reid are going to be a lethal bench combo. And I think Joe Ingles brings a really, really good amount of maturity to this bench unit as well. But, I mean, looking at the starting lineup, I mean, I think Ant is going to take an even bigger step this year. I think he averaged 26 last year. I think we could see him eclipsing 30 this year potentially. I think Cat's going to he's got to prove that he earned that contract. So I think he's going to play a lot better this year too. And I think they're hungry for a championship. I think they have their leader, and I think he's going to push that team like Michael Jordan did, like Kobe did, like LeBron has done in the past to kind of like win because he wants to win. Rudy wants to. I mean, they all want to win. Obviously, that's the main game. But I think they're going to ball out. I think they're going to take their defense to another level. I think Jaden McDaniels could even get better on offense because he showed that in the playoffs, that first round series. He had multiple good games. And even throughout the playoffs, we saw glimpses of him being a really, really, really good scorer. I don't think he's going to be like a 25 point per game scorer, but I could see like 18, 19 game. Maybe not this year, but I think the Timberwolves are going to be ready to play. And I think their bench got a lot better. I think even if it's just Dillingham, I think their bench is going to be a lot better. I think the bench has energy. I think they're going to be so fun to watch.
Is there a big question mark you're looking out for? Being so big on Minnesota, is there a weakness you're kind of looking at? Like,
I mean,
we definitely should improve on this if we want to win a chip.
I mean, it could be can like someone else step up and kind of be that Jamal Murray for Ant, like that Jamal Murray type of like Robin for Ant, like the Batman or the Joker to the Batman in a way, because I mean, like Cat's good, but Cat scares me a lot. Cat scares me on both ends of the floor. I think he's their liability in the starting lineup on defense. I mean, Mike Conley, obviously, because of his size, but he's even, for a point guard, he's a very good defender, in my opinion, like just from watching last year. But Cat, he just doesn't move the needle for me. Like I said, for Westbrook, he just, I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for them with that. But I think he's kind of like their X factor. If he plays well, sky's the limit for this team. But if Cat doesn't improve off of last year, because last year he was good. I mean, he was a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he just, I don't know. He was underwhelming.
I was honestly going to say the same thing. Cat is the weakness in that starting lineup, which is wild to say because first off, he is a better player than most of those guys outside of Ant, but I want to see it more consistently. Jaden McDaniels is perfect in his role as a 3-and-D guy, and he's one of the best. Mike Conley is the playmaker. He's the floor general. He is perfect at that. Rudy Gobert is the big man in the middle. Perfect at that. Ant is your MVP. Perfect at that. Cat needs to be that Robin. He 100%. But if he can do that, I tend to agree with you. This might be one of the most complete teams in the entire NBA. That bench is so good. I was really high on Terrence Shannon Jr. in college, and he's
Yes.
like 3 down on the behind Ant Edwards, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like fully infused into that second unit with Dillingham, Naz Reid, and all that, and he could go off this year. I love that dude from Illinois.
How tall is he? I'm gonna look.
I don't know, but he's like an Ant type. He can jump out of a building.
Yeah, he's a wing.
He's 6'6", so even if they wanted to, they could run him because Joe Ingles isn't gonna. I don't think Joe Ingles is gonna like not necessarily play a ton of minutes. I could see them kind of like running either him or Nikhil at the 3 sometimes on the backup bench unit. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed like to them doing that. But I mean, yeah, I think the sky's the limit for this team. I'm so excited.
I know Joe Ingles is perfect. I'm not gonna lie. Papa Joe still got something. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have any questions regarding the Timberwolves?
Yeah, definitely. Here's the thing. I mean, on paper, they're great. They made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals last year, and then they had one of the best drafts, probably the second best draft in the division behind the Jazz. I really like the players the Jazz took. But, I mean, Dillingham at 8 and Terrence Shannon at 23 was really solid draft night for a team that went to the Western Conference Finals the previous year. So, on paper, like, everything adds up, and they should be poised to make it back there. But, like, what you guys are saying about Cat being the X factor, I kind of like there's some skepticism there about, you know, is he going to be able to do enough next to Ant to make it happen? Because he's going to have to, like, when the Minnesota Timberwolves aren't looking their best, like, there's no questions about them on defense. It's their offense that, like, who's going to create shots if Ant is missing his mid-range jumpers? Who's going to be knocking down threes because they only have Jaden McDaniels and, like, Mike Conley. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a great, I think, wing guy that plays both ends. And I just want to say this. I haven't had the opportunity to say this. Canada should have played him a lot more in the Olympics.
Yeah. Yes, they should have.
But, you know, I mean, they lost Kyle
cousin.
Anderson. They lost Monte Morris. They lost Jordan McLaughlin. They lost a couple rotation guys. And so you're going to be relying on these 2 new rookies to have especially an impact on offense. And that's kind of where my skepticism comes in, along with, like, Cat being the X factor.
That's exactly my questions about this team. It honestly is the depth because their bench, it did get, in my opinion, it did get a little bit worse on paper because Rob Dillingham, I was a huge fan of watching him during the summer league. He looks like a player that definitely will become the future point guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves in a couple of years. But right now, he's a rookie point guard coming in on a team that has high aspirations, high expectations. In the NBA, the toughest position to come into as a rookie is that point guard position. And his starter, Mike Conley was great last season. He is only getting older. He's going to be 37 years old next season. You don't know what that could mean for him. And, you know, the Timberwolves, there are guys like, you know, Karl Anthony Towns. He is a big question when it comes to playoff time. Honestly, in the regular season, I know he was a questionable all-star player last year. We were all going crazy when it was announced that he made it. But he is still a great player in the regular season. His numbers are fantastic. His efficiency is amazing. So I think, you know, their starting unit, it's obviously great. They're going to be amazing defensively once again. Anthony Edwards could make another jump. That would be fantastic. But my question is their bench because Kyle Anderson was a nice piece for them, was able to, you know, create offense for other players. Joe Ingles, another old guy stepping in there. I don't know how much he's going to be able to play. And if, you know, Joe Ingles doesn't really work out at that position, they really don't have a backup 4. You know, if things don't really work out for this team or for those bench players and they get injured, or the starters get injured, it's going to be tough for them, you know, come playoff time because they're going to be relying on, like you guys said, or like Nick said, rookies. And it's tough, you know, coming in, you know, to this type of situation. But those are really my main questions because this team, it does look great defensively. I mean, they say defense wins championships, and they've got some of the best defense in the league. I mean, I don't see why they couldn't make it back to a Western Conference final. To me, their ceiling is a finals appearance. But there are definitely some teams that could, you know, stop them along the way. I'll say that.
I guess my bold predict. Go ahead, Jackson.
I was just gonna say that for Rob Dillingham, I'm actually so excited for him to like not sit behind, but like kind of sit behind Mike Conley, even if it's just for like a year or two, because I think it could be like Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love, if anyone watches football. I think it could be like that. Like this vet who, I mean, obviously Mike Conley isn't an MVP type player, but like just this vet who's like he's been a great player at the position for a very long time, and he's mentoring this like younger person who has a ton of talent, but just has a lot of things that he can like kind of tune up and get better at. I think that's a perfect situation for Rob Dillingham. Kind of
I don't
being
know.
behind him, like
I'm not as high on Rob as you guys seem to me because he is only 6'1", and he's gonna like his play style requires him to hit a lot of tough shots if he's gonna make an impact.
Yeah.
And like the dude is 19. Like if they're not falling and he's got a lot of pressure on him to fill like that backup spot on a championship caliber team, like it could go south pretty quick, I think. I guess my forward
True.
prediction would be I think Terrence is going to have a bigger impact than Rob, especially like in the beginning of the year. Like maybe it takes Rob a little bit of time to get his feet wet. And then towards the end, like he kind of picks it up, starts averaging close to like double digits or something. But I think Terrence Shannon, this guy who plays, he can do everything on offense, and he's an athletic freak. I think he's just going to have a bigger impact right from the jump for the Wolves.
I completely
Yeah, I
agree.
don't mind
As I said, I like Dillingham, but you're 100% right. He's small. He's 19. Might take him a couple years, and then he could be really good. And he
Yeah.
does, like you said, Goglin, he does have the perfect person to mentor under. Like, if you're going to make a football reference, I'll make one. Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. Like, you never know what's going to happen. It's the perfect mentorship. But I am also extremely high on Terrence Shannon. I think he's going to be the big rookie on that team over Dillingham. I think he could come out of the gate just getting immediate minutes off the bench and just providing a spark. I'm going to take the over, by the way, for them. Probably around the same, I would say, for the Nuggets, just because the Western Conference is so tough. This division is so tough, and they play each team 4 times. So I'm going to probably say around that 55 mark win as well, but still the over.
Yeah, I'll go with that as well. Moving forward for this team, they definitely do have some questions as far as their contracts go. We talked about it a lot during the season. You know, Karl Anthony Towns still under that, massive contract for still a few more seasons. Rudy Gobert is a $46 million player option for next year. He'll probably accept that. Still, defensive player of the year. But Naz Reid is the question for me. Obviously, last year's 6th man of the year. He's got a $15 million player option for next year. And with the Timberwolves, they're going to have to make a decision because Naz Reid, his value with the way the cap is going up as, a great, bench player, very good, player across the whole entire league. His value may be 18 million a year, 18, 19 million a year at this point. And if that is the case, depending on what Rudy Gobert would get with his contract, you'd be paying like $120 million next season for basically one position. And I don't know if the Timberwolves want to be doing that going forward. So they're going to have to make some decisions. I know Jackson has he wants Karl Anthony Towns. He thinks that he's the player that could potentially get traded.
He should be.
But then there are still questions I have with that because then I feel like it hurts the depth of the Timberwolves depending on who comes back. So they just got a lot of questions going into next season. But as far as this season, they should be great in the regular season, and they're going to have a chance in the playoffs again like they did last season.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the standings again from last year. I think they'll probably be around 57, 58. That's kind of where OKC and Denver were last year, and I think they're going to overtake Denver at least. And I think they're going to be right up there with OKC. So I think like 57, 58. I think they'll still be behind OKC. But I think their ceiling is higher than Denver this year. And their floor is, I think their floor is like on par, if not a little better than Denver. I don't know though. Denver does have that one guy.
Yeah, they do have the best player in the world, so automatically I put them automatically at home court advantage team, the Denver Nuggets. Minnesota, not that long ago, it was just 2 seasons ago where they were a playing team. So I think the floor, and they basically have the same roster. So I mean, just 2 years separated from that, the floors are definitely, I would definitely take the Nuggets floor over the Timberwolves, but the ceiling's very, very similar. That would be a great matchup if we got that in the playoffs once again. Next up, let's go to the OKC Thunder, who last season had a historic season, probably the best season for a young team that we've seen since the Thunder when they had Durant, Westbrook, Harden, Ibaka, all those young guys, jumping all the way up from a playing spot to the number 1 seed in the West, 57 wins. Then they go in the offseason and they get Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, 2 of the most valuable role players in basketball. So, Joey, do you have any questions about this team? Because to me, the only question is what flaws do they even have? Because they just look fantastic.
I was just saying, can you bring up that depth chart? Because oh my gosh.
That looks ridiculous.
They don't really have a weakness. If you want to say anything, it's their bench, but their bench is still really good all around. Like, you could say once Holmgren left or was out, like they got really small, and then this offseason they addressed that by getting the best big man on the market in Hartenstein. And you're like, hey, we already have Lou Dort, so let's just get another really good guard defender. And you bring in one of the best ones on the market as well. Like, this team is going for 60 wins and like a finals appearance. This team is so complete, so good. The only thing I have is like the question mark is health. Like, I know Chet Holmgren, God bless his soul, because after we missed his entire technical rookie year, or his would have been his rookie year because of injury, and then last year he played all 82 games.
Yeah.
I don't know how, like, I know he's gonna want to be out there, but I don't know if I would roll him out for 82 games. The man is still kind of like a toothpick in my opinion. So his bones could snap at any moment, and then I love Hartenstein, but then you're back to the same position where it's like, now we're really thin at the big man position.
Well, you got a Jay Will who played that backup role all season. So I mean,
yeah,
I think a question that I would have, I really don't have any questions regarding like anything that scares me about this team, because I feel like even if injuries,
I do.
You do? Nick, go ahead. What's your question?
I have one.
Okay.
I have one. Okay, so this has to do. My biggest question is, I'm gonna be watching J-Dub. I want to see how good J-Dub is gonna be.
Okay.
Because if they can, my biggest concern would be just where's the offensive production coming when Shea's not on the court, and if they can stagger like his minutes a bit with J-Dub so that J-Dub is out there all the time when Shea isn't, and then he can like provide their offensive production and initiate everything that's going on with them, then they don't have any questions to answer, because like their roster is ridiculously good. But I don't know. I just I think that I don't think it was a bad idea to move on from Giddey, but Giddey was someone who could like produce offense when Shea wasn't on the court. And I just don't know if they have. I guess that would be my only question, is like their offensive production without Shea on the court.
That's a valid question. J-Dub, a guy who last year was sensational when you look at his scoring, his efficiency, his clutch stats were even better than his regular stats. He's a guy I'm super high on. I've been on record as saying that he is going to make his first All-Star game this year. I would love to see that happen. This Thunder team, they just play such great team basketball on both ends of the floor, and that's why I'm, so in love with them heading into the season, because even if Shea is off the court, no player has a bigger, there aren't any egos on this team. Everyone wants to see each other succeed. So players will give up the ball. This team is filled with primary to secondary pick and roll players. They can all make plays. They can all do things off the dribble. They can all play defense. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, I think of Shea as a great defender, but that is mainly because of the guys he is surrounded with. And now you've got a Caruso. I think Hartenstein is so clutch, because I think their biggest weakness last year was the rebounding or the lack thereof. Even though Shea, Giddey, Dort, J-Dub, they all did a solid job on the boards. There's nothing like having an actual big body that's going to get you those offensive rebounds. The question I was going to say regarding this team, who do you guys think they should start? Because I think they've got two ways they can go regarding this team. And that is, if I can find their roster yet again, until I find it, it's, the question of Hartenstein and Holmgren together. Here it is. Holmgren and Hartenstein together to have two bigs on the floor, or do you go with Caruso in that starting lineup? It's like, which new Thunder player should start?
I think Hartenstein. I mean, just looking at Chet, like you said, the rebounding numbers. I think if they start Hartenstein, he's going to have such a big impact on the boards. I mean, we saw with New York last year. He was an animal on the boards. He was unstoppable. Offensive rebounding machine, defensive rebounding machine, whatever you needed from him. He proved that he is ready to be a starting center, and I think he deserves to be a starting center this year.
I would go with Hart. Sorry.
You're good.
I would also go with Hartenstein because for some reason, a new position in the NBA is power forward / shooting guard, and J-Dub can just slide right down to the shooting guard and keep Lou Dort at the 3. And then I really am interested to see what Chet would look like with another big man next to him, especially one who was literally like one of the top offensive rebounders in the entire NBA. So I would go Shea, J-Dub, Dort, Chet, Hartenstein.
I would also go Hartenstein. Like Chet Holmgren, and that's the thing. You're talking about J-Dub, you're talking about Hartenstein. I'm gonna talk about Chet. He's a stretch dude. Dude can play inside, outside. He's mobile. He can guard that well. It's not much of a downgrade. I personally think his best position is going to be power forward over center, where he doesn't have to be just down in the middle. He can stretch the floor. He can go inside if he wants to, but he'll get more blocks if he's guarding outside, inside. I don't know. I'm very high on Chet this year. If he can stay healthy, which is my only concern with him, I honestly think he can make an all-star game this year.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I mean,
if I had a hot take, that would be it, personally. I think he emerges as that number 2 star over J-Dub. I think he takes the leap over J-Dub and makes an all-star team and is the number 2 guy in OKC.
I think Chet or J-Dub, whoever emerges as a star whoever emerges, Chet Holmgren, if he's at that power forward position, it just unlocks the rest of the potential with this team because he's already one of the most versatile players in the game.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. That's just look at him dribbling the ball out there. It's incredible. Of course he has Zubac on the ropes. Imagine him, power forward just makes sense for him.
And he can play center, obviously, late in games if they want to go to that. And Caruso's a guy who's been used to coming off the bench before, so he would slide into that role. And that would fit as well with the defense on the bench. Cason Wallace was a very good defender as a rookie. Aaron Wiggins, an efficient beast on both ends of the floor.
Isaiah Joe got re-signed this summer.
He's a sniper.
You got Jay Will as a third-string center guy potentially, or you could just stagger Chet and Hartenstein together. This team has it all.
One thing we haven't talked about is their youth. I mean, they have a lot of expectations here. Can they live up to them?
I don't know if I saw Minnesota do it last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if OKC does it this year. I know OKC had a bigger we kind of expect more out of OKC after being the 1 seed, and Minnesota kind of came out of nowhere last year, along with OKC, but Minnesota made it farther. I think OKC that was their playoff experience. I think they've had it. Shea is the leader. Chet finally getting his feet wet. J-Dub as well. As long as your big guys, your starting lineup guys, and even Hartenstein with the Knicks, you got playoff experience on this team. That's all you
Caruso's
need.
got a ring.
Yeah, Caruso's
Yeah,
even got a ring. Look at that. I don't think the inexperience. I think there's enough guys who have seen it and will lead them and be like, okay, we're cool. We're cool. Like, let's just play our game.
And with that Caruso experience, I think that brings a whole other perspective, which not a lot of people are probably talking about with this team. But because of this youth that they have and so many of their players being on their rookie contracts, it gives them the leeway to make moves for a Caruso who's eligible for a 4-year, $80 million extension right around Christmas time. They'll probably give that to him. Gives them the leeway to trade for Caruso, probably extend him, gives them the leeway to sign Hartenstein for 3 years, $30 million a year. But Caruso coming from, Chicago, but the Lakers, when after they won their championship, the front office, the management split up those players. Once it's time for J-Dub and Chet to get paid, the Thunder may not get better than they are right now. So they need to take advantage of this current window that they have, even though they're still, one of the youngest teams in basketball. Their window is right now. So they need to take advantage of it while they can before, those guys at the top have to get paid. And they'll be like, man, it would have been nice to take advantage of this team we had when, I was 21, 22 years old.
It's really funny that you mentioned that their window is right now because the other two teams we've talked about, their window is right now as well. We don't know how much longer the Nuggets are going to stick with this team. We talk about moving them. Cat, same way. The Minnesota right now is probably one of their most talented teams they're going to have in a while because they got to start paying some people as well. Like all these guys, all these teams in this one division. I can't wait for the NBA season. I'm so excited.
Yeah. I mean, well, there is a world where, OKC pays, $1 billion into the luxury tag. But heck, I think they'd be willing to for this team because they go big name hunting. They want to win. They've been in the tank doing, if this team wins a championship, which I think they will. I think this team should definitely win a championship with the score. I know everyone said that with the Russ, KD, and Harden, so maybe it's a Thunder.
But curse.
Maybe whoever isn't their or whoever their third best player is this year, if it's Chet or J-Dub, maybe they'll get traded to the Rockets and become an MVP.
Oh god. Okay, but as far as regular season win totals, it is at 56.5 wins. Joey, you said around the 60 win mark. I agree.
They're hitting 60 this year.
I agree.
Yeah, I think they're going to be 60, 61, 62 in that like three range.
This is my favorite to win the championship this season. I don't know if it's because they're all so young, but I'm going to go all season thinking that this is the championship team. They're obviously, I mean, it's such a competitive league. It's hard to really say, but I'm hopping on the Thunder bandwagon.
There we go.
Choo choo.
But yeah, it should be great to watch, all those three teams battle it out at the top of the division. It's going to be so much fun to watch. But now let's go to two teams that were at the lower end of the standings. Two teams that are, going to be playing to maybe get to where the Thunder, Nuggets, Timberwolves are a few years later on from now. First, let's talk about the Portland TRAILBLAZERS, who last year won 21 games. It was the first year of their rebuild post Damian Lillard. A lot of guys were injured. Rookie year for Scoot Henderson. DeAndre Ayton played very well second half of the season. They made a trade for Denny Avdia. They stole him from the Wizards. Their win total this season is only 21.5 games. And honestly, I kind of like this team. They have a lot of different types of players. I'm honestly shocked that their win total is this low.
It does seem low. They don't have a bad. I mean, their roster is not bad.
Yeah, I think if I was a betting man, which I can't because I'm not 21, but I would hammer the over on this. I mean, 21.5. This team is, I'd say it's going to be like a 30-plus win team. I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, you never know. DeAndre Ayton could pop off. I mean, he could even not pop off, but even like 20 and 10. Like, that's a good season for him. I mean, Anthony Simons showed that he is a fantastic scoring option. I mean, Denny Avdia is going to be a great playmaker for this team. He's going to be shown that he can also score the ball really well. So I could see this team maybe sneaking into a play-in. Honestly, that might be a steaming hot take.
That
But
is
honestly,
a steaming hot take. Do you know what teams were in the play-in last year and how many wins they had?
Dude, look,
I guess it is the West. I guess it is the West.
Jackson's not the only one that thinks they could do this. I like this team a lot, but I am also very aware of how loaded the West is, and that probably won't happen. I'm thinking that this team is going to, the last season they were down at the bottom of the conference. I think that next season they're going to have a year kind of like the Utah Jazz have had the last 2 years, where they, after trading Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, the first season they start the year, they start the year on fire. They were one of the best teams in the conference, 31-31 through 62 games. Then they realized, like, oh man, the Western Conference is kind of crazy. Let's lose some games. We really didn't, trade those guys away to, make another playoff spot. Then they lost some games. Then even last season, they're 26-26 over halfway through the season. Then they start to fall off a little bit, and they end up with 31 wins. I think this team is going to be around that 28-29 win mark. But, I feel like if the conference wasn't so loaded with talent, I mean, this team it's honestly pretty deep. They've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. Anthony Simons can be their scorer. If Scoot Henderson can have a blow up second season, to me, my question with the Blazers is which bigs do they want to move forward with? It's something that Nick and I have talked about a whole lot with this team, because DeAndre Ayton, had a very solid second half of the year last year for the Blazers, averaged 17 and 11. And to close the season, in his final 12 games, he put up 24 and 13 boards per game. He was outstanding the second half of the year. You got Robert Williams, all defensive player, injury prone guy, but a very valuable player around the league. And then you draft Donovan Clingan, who was one of the highest coveted big guys in the draft. So I would assume the Blazers want to move forward with Clingan. So what did they do with these other guys, around the team? They still got guys like Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon, other guys that are, trade chips throughout the league. I just want to see what the Blazers want to do with those other guys.
I think they lost Brogdon, didn't they?
Yeah, they traded Brogdon for.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Brogdon's on the Wizards. I forgot about Brogdon.
So it's either going to be Ayton or Williams. I would figure that they move by the deadline. I hope to see, honestly, one of them land in LA. I would love to see. I mean, I don't know if LA is going to be willing to trade for Ayton, but that would be pretty crazy. I mean, that would be nuts.
That would be.
Yeah, that would be great.
Let me finish real quick. The other thing is they got a lot of overlap, not only at that center position, but their three guards between Scoot, Shaedon Sharpe, and Anthony Simons. Those guys can't all be on the court together, and they're all pretty good.
Yeah, that's my mistake. I knew there was someone. Shaedon Sharpe is the guy I was forgetting about, because he had a great, very solid year last year. Put up like, I think 15, 16 points per game. Like his rookie season. He had a couple heaters, bro. Like he had a couple high scoring games. Yeah, like Shaedon Sharpe, his rookie season was a guy that you saw a lot of his highlights being just crazy putback dunks. Right. Last year, 16 points, 5 boards per game, low efficiency, but only in 32 games. He was injured. Anthony Simons has developed into a, very good scorer and playmaker, good combo guy. And then Scoot Henderson's obviously, talk about rookie point guards. He showed that it can be a struggle the first year. I think he's going to be a lot better the second year. They have a lot of different players, and that's why I'm very intrigued by what they want to do, because I feel like they could be very competitive in games. They just may not have the closers to, finish off games. But, I think that they will be a very competitive team, at least to start the season.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I can see this team winning 30 games. That's probably where I would put them. But they're going to lose a lot of close games. It's going to be a lot of heartbreak this year. But Portland's definitely in the right direction. Scoot struggled for like 3/4 of the season, really started turning it on later as well. Him and DeAndre Ayton started clicking. So I think you roll with that for this year. But obviously, you want to roll with Clinton. That guy's going to be a dog.
Well, I know, Nick, you were a guy that had questions about Klingon heading into the season.
Correct.
I kind of wonder. I just wonder what the Blazers are going to do, at least to start the year. Because right now, if everyone's healthy, Klingon is the third string center, and I don't think that they're going to be playing three centers. So I feel like a move has to be made at some point.
I know. Bro.
Nick and we've been talking about, over the offseason about being very intrigued with a potential of Robert Williams to New Orleans because they need a big in a Brandon Ingram sort of trade. It would be kind of difficult now because, that you trade for Denny, but even that, I think he's a very versatile player. The Blazers have moves to make. I'm excited. That's the number one thing I'm excited to see is what they end up doing with these players.
Jeremy Grant could be on the move. You never know.
Yeah, they just got a lot of valuable players.
Dude,
I think we'll have more wins than Utah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Dude,
you know what? Miles, you know what Robert Williams' nickname is, right?
Time Lord.
Time Lord.
Yeah. They call him that because it's his time to get traded to a new team. Okay, that's why. Because he's too injury prone for a young team. I think they can get some assets, trade him while his value's high, and I think that's who they should trade. I don't think necessarily it's who they will, but I think it's who they should trade.
It'd be crazy if they traded Ayton. I could honestly see that happening though.
Yeah, because they're gonna have to pick a guy. They're gonna have to pick, some players, to keep going with. Robert Williams. I mean, another thing, he is very injury prone, but I don't remember which team, or it was the Hornets. I mentioned this with the Hornets. How Robert Williams 6 games into the season gets injured, and then it's like the Blazers, they want to lose, so it's like, all right, you can take your time with your rehab, all that, because we don't care about winning games. So. I think if he was on a more competitive team, that would help. It was weird seeing him in a Blazers jersey in those 6 games. He was taking like mid-range jump shots and they were going in. Like he's a player.
He win a lot of games with the Celtics though too. I feel like that's kind of like.
Oh yeah, he's definitely an injury-prone player, for his career. So that is the risk that you get for potentially trading for him.
And I think his value right now is probably the highest it's going to be. At least, I mean, I don't see his value getting much crazier. So I feel like trade him while his value is high. I mean,
let's see, what's his contract? He's got 2 more seasons for $12 and $13 million. So he's on a cheap contract for his
perfect time for being traded right now.
Yeah, very tradable asset for sure. So
get him to LA.
Just throw all the bigs to LA. That's
this Portland team. Last thing I'll say before we move on, they are in the right direction. They're not. Again, I don't see them getting the playoffs this year. But Chauncey Billups, I think, is a good head coach. You got a lot of great young talent. You have a lot of tradable assets to get even more players in. Portland, you are sitting pretty in like 5 years' time. You're going to be very happy.
I'm excited to see how those guys develop. All
right. I cannot wait for Shaedon Sharpe to hit a fading 3 in Game 5 against the Rockets.
Yeah.
Jeremy Grant fadeaway 3 banked it in at the buzzer.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I might just cease to exist. I might just turn to dust. I really might. I might just disintegrate.
All right. Last but not least, let's go to the Utah Jazz, who, like I said when talking about what the Blazers could do this year, very competitive through, 50, 60 games of the last 2 seasons. Last year, they ended up winning 31 games. This year, their win total is at 29.5. Here is their roster. I don't really have a lot to say about the Jazz other than I just want this team to be bad. They need to just go all in on the tank because clearly being competitive for a while and then losing at the end of the season, that method has not worked to trying to get top draft picks, even though Cody Williams, it could definitely have a, very, very good career. They need to be in the run for a top overall pick. So I honestly just hope that this team is bad.
Why is Walker Kessler so happy, man? Like, why is he dude, like, chill, Walker.
This team should be bad. This team will be bad. I'm taking the under. I don't know what direction they're going with. They got some good young guys, they got draft picks, and they got some good veterans.
They extended Markkanen as well.
Yeah, they extended Markkanen too, which right now you want to be bad. Like by the time you're competitive to like in the West at least, he's going to be gone. I don't know why you would have.
I don't know.
I think they want to keep him as a building block moving forward.
I don't know, man. I don't see the Jazz being good in 5 years' time, and by that time he'll be gone.
Well, it's
They get
easy
Cooper Flag.
They get Cooper Flag, everything
exactly.
changes.
Like it's easy to say that right now because they don't have top overall draft picks because they haven't really been tanking. Like
they need to go for it this year. I'm with you.
Keontae George, very good rookie season. Colin Sexton has been playing very well the last 2 seasons with Utah. Larry Markkanen, obviously all-star type player, but they need that star player to get from the draft. What was that, Jackson?
They need Batman. Like Larry Markkanen's more of a Robin player on a champion or even like a playoff team.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I don't think he's a number 1 guy. I think he's a number 2.
He'd fit really well on a team like the Cavs right now.
Stop. He would, but yes.
He would, but then we wouldn't have Donovan Mitchell, so I don't care.
I really think that the Jazz need to trade Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, and John Collins as soon as possible because with Keontae George going into his second year, you're going to want him on the court because he had a great rookie season. They also had some flashes from Taylor Hendricks, who was drafted last year at the end of last season. He was not great for the majority of the year, but he had some flashes at the end of last year. And then they had
was good too.
Yeah, Bryce Sensabaugh. And I really like who they drafted this year. You guys know I'm very high on Cody Williams. They got a steal at the 10th pick with him, and then they got Kyle Filipowski in the first pick of the second round. So they got some guys who you're going to want to see on the court, and if you're going to want to lose and see those guys on the court at the same time, like let's move on from Jordan Clarkson. Let's move on from Colin Sexton. Let's trade them.
They need to get
Could we see
Cody
Cody Williams becoming better than J-Dub?
Yeah, I do.
This first year?
Oh,
not his first.
Maybe career-wise. Talking about those players contract-wise, John Collins, it'll be a very tough guy to trade. $26 million this year player. Same amount as a player option the next year. I think he'll just finish his contract out in Utah. And he's still a good player. He's still a very, quality player. But Sexton, we knew when they traded for him and he signed that contract. I mean, $18 million this year, $19 million the next year, very tradable. Clarkson's a $14 million guy the next 2 seasons. Those are guys that they could look to move on from.
Always love John Collins.
Sexton, Markkanen. I mean, those are Sexton, Markkanen, Clarkson. Those are all guys that I'd love to see them on winning teams. Because specifically Sexton and Markkanen, because Markkanen for Chicago, Cleveland, Utah, Sexton in Cleveland, now Utah. We haven't seen them on good teams besides, that 1 year where Sexton got injured and the Cavs made the play-in. But I would just love to see them, play solid.
Dude, yeah, John Collins is my favorite player on the Jazz. You know why? He baptized Joel Embiid.
Oh my goodness.
My favorite.
They also drafted Isaiah Collier, who at one point was like a top 5 recruit in their class. They got him with a 29th pick.
He was number 1 for a long time.
Yeah, he really was.
Is that Patty Mills?
Patty Mills, yes.
They need to trade his butt too.
No, he's just there to be with his
Patty Mills, Sexton, Clarkson, Collins, get them all out of there.
Filipowski's going to be a great either starting big eventually or backup big, even though his situation's weird too.
I like Walker Kessler, which is weird that they got Filipowski because I also like Filipowski, but Kessler's an insane interior defender.
Well, so something interesting about that, I've heard reports from a lot of different sources that Walker Kessler they may look to move on from him. Honestly, they may look to trade him and move on from him because they're not sure if he really fits what they really want to do. And this is a player that I could see getting moved on for Brandon Ingram as well in a potential
That's what I was
trade.
thinking.
Because look at the roster. I mean, Ingram at the 3, Markkanen at the 4, if Filipowski develops or you need another big there at the 5, and then Kessler fits in perfectly with the Pelicans, I think that would be a great trade if that were to happen. But he's a guy that I think this first half of the season, it's going to be about him raising his trade stock because they don't really want to keep him, which I think is kind of strange because, he is a great, shot blocker. At least he was his rookie season, kind of tailed off a little bit last year, but
sophomore slump. It happens to everyone.
yeah. Except for me here at lovely Ashland University.
Except for you, Merv.
Shout out Ashland University. So are we all going the under with the Jazz?
Yeah, they're going to win
No,
like 20 games.
sorry, I forgot what their over-under was.
29.5.
I'd take the under I think 26. I mean, like nothing too crazy. But I could also, if they keep all their pieces, that's a darn good starting lineup though. I mean, because I think Keontae George is going to take a big leap this year. Because I think he's just going to go out there and just get buckets. I think his ceiling is so high. I like Keontae George a lot.
I want to see all these young guys play all the minutes.
Yeah,
Filipowski,
Williams. You got Sensabaugh, like Nick was saying. I think they got so many young pieces. I think in 5 years this could be a pretty nasty little team. But they could end into the problem that Houston's running into right now with too much
overlap.
Too much. Yeah, definitely could happen. The thing with all these teams, like in the Western Conference, we've now talked about all 15 teams in depth. Haven't had a lot of teams that were like, oh my gosh, they're going to be super bad. Some of these teams are going to have to lose games. Someone has to lose games, and it may be teams like to me, it's eventually we'll get to our standings predictions. That may come out a week from today, actually, by the time we do it. To me, the bottom 3 unanimously would be Utah, the Spurs, and the Blazers. Those would be my bottom tier of Western Conference teams. But they're all going in the right direction. They have great futures ahead of them.
Yeah, I really like where the league is at right now, just because there is so much variability from year to year.
It's competitive. It's like there's a lot of
good teams.
It's gonna be a very competitive NBA season.
There's no LeBron, D-Wade, Chris Bosh team, really.
No, there's no super team yet. I mean, the Celtics were, great. We'll see what happens with the Thunder moving forward if the Houston Rockets come out in 7 million seasons.
Mm.
It has seemed like the last 2 years, like the correct champion has really been like
the winner.
Evident. The winner, and it's been evident, and it hasn't really been a question.
Yeah, I would agree. The last 2 seasons, the team that won the championship, they legitimately won the championship. I don't think there's anything you could say this team shouldn't have won the championship. I think that's definitely correct. Well, that is it for the Northwest Division. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. We've had a lot of fun reading the comments over the last few videos. Also, some of the 10, 15-minute shorter videos. Those have been great. Next episode will be the final division preview, and it will be the Central Division. We'll get to talk about our Cavs, get to talk about Giannis and the Bucks, Pacers, the Pistons, and the Bulls.
Bulls.
So that'll be a lot of fun coming out on the next episode on Tuesday. You guys have anything else before we get out of here?
Thanks for watching.
Doubles. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe for more NBA content. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Peace.